Hey, welcome to the Youth Leaders Brain. We are on episode 3 here, top 5 ways for youth leaders to help parents. I'm joined with Donny Wilson, Ryan Rench right here. We're talking about the top 5 ways to help parents. And when I'm looking at a list of like who we would use at this, we can't go with the 20-something crowd. They don't have as much experience with parents, and so I was looking at my list of old guys. Old guys.
I've made it.
Yeah. So you guys have arrived to the mature. You have been around a while.
I'm thinking there.
So tell me just a little bit about your ministry, about what your youth ministry was, just real quick. So there might be a few guys out here who don't know who you are. Start us
So I'm youth pastor at Lighthouse Baptist Church in Moreno Valley, California for 16 years. I was there and under a pastor, and then he transitioned to retirement and took over as the pastor about 4 years ago now.
And you have you've worked with some new youth leaders within your own organization.
So the pastor before me allowed me to hire my own guy before he left.
Yeah.
And he was there about 3 years and then transitioned to his home church in a good way. And I was without a youth pastor for about a year, and then hired a guy 2 years ago,
Okay.
I guess.
And you have kids in the youth group now?
I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old.
Okay, so you are in the thick of,
Yeah,
okay,
I know
you
what I
need
want.
to help me do
Yeah.
this. So, Ryan, a little bit about you.
Everything I've learned from youth ministry, I learned from Donny Wilson, that's for sure.
Thanks a lot.
He was the old guy youth pastor when I first took over in 2010. And so we went on some trips together, and I learned a lot from him. That was
Getting
good.
thrown under
And
the
from
bus.
Sam as well. So yeah, if I have problems, it's Donny's fault.
Okay, so is anybody 40 in there?
I'm 43.
No.
You're 43?
I'm 34, yeah.
34, 51. Wow, we've got it.
The gamut.
We've got
Yeah.
the generations
Yeah.
covered here. Continue
But
on.
if you stick around long enough, you do become the old guy in the group too. So
Uh-huh.
we took over in 2010 for my brother-in-law, and then in 2019 I transitioned that out to one of the guys that was in my youth group, got married, and then came on staff. And then not this summer, but last summer was his first introduction to the youth group. So he's been going about a year and a half now in our place, and it's been awesome. My dad started our church when I was 6 months old, so that's where I've grown up, and I'm the associate pastor there at Calvary Baptist Church in Temecula. And
your oldest child is
he's 8.
8.
He's
Okay,
8.
so
So
he's
we're already looking forward to the
right
youth
on
group
that.
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's just coming up.
Yeah.
This is an interesting thing. I mean, Donny called my number 5. I mean, he just nailed it. We don't share what we've got here because I don't know what they will come up with. But I mentioned just a brief thing about my first one, and he nailed it. So he's paid attention well along the way.
Wise.
Yeah, so wise. So this is an interesting topic, really, because I think it's an important thing for a youth leader to really to think through. Okay, how do I help parents? And I'm kind of curious about your guys' list. This was not the easiest one for me to put together because. I mean, in some ways, it almost was all philosophical, and then I'm like, okay, I can't just do that. I want to actually share what that looks like. So my list is a little of both. I mean, I'm just kind of like some core thoughts, but then a couple of ideas, and it was a harder list than I thought. How about you guys? How was?
Yeah, I went the same way. I was thinking, how can I? Not necessarily what I did, but what do I want the next guy to do for my kids and for our youth group? And so not as much from experience maybe, but yeah, partly the philosophy, and then part of the practical side too. Same thing.
Yeah.
The heart
Weird
behind
mix.
it.
Yeah.
I would agree. It was tough.
Okay. Well, here we go. I'll start us off with number 5 and then work our way to number 1. We'll see how many duplicates we end up with here. But here, my number 5 is very simply, I work for the pastor and the parents. And it's one of those things that you have to, as a youth leader, you're spending all your time with the kids. So they're the ones that you're kind of interacting with, you're ministering to, you're helping, and it's real easy. You go just a few months, and before you know it, all your input is from the youth, and all your ministry is with your youth, and you forget that I'm actually here to help the parents and the pastor. Like that's who I'm working for, and so it's probably my number one, but I needed to put it here first because everything else kind of makes sense when this happens. I know it's not the topic right now, but I work for the pastor in a way that tries to get these young people ready to serve in church. And
Glorify God.
yeah, they've got to go from 7th grade, hey, I just got out of junior church, to actually now I can help out. And for a parent, I think now the gamut gets really wide. You've got to figure out what that young person needs, what the parent's trying to do. And so this was really good for me. It's like one of those things I kind of had to put in front of my face. I work for the parents and the pastor, and how do I do that?
And I would agree with you. And when I hired both guys, that's the first thing I said to them. And then I defined that for them a little bit in the sense of, you're going to know the kids, and your pastor and the parents are going to know the kids more, but you have a unique insight. And so you need to be in tune with those kids and be able to confront the pastor and the parents to help the kids. Don't forget that. That's kind of you're the in-between guy, and you have this weird trust that, but you can't, it comes from the pastor and the parents.
Yeah.
Don't forget
And
that.
on the other side, it's not a slight if a parent doesn't back everything you do in your youth ministry, because it's not really your youth ministry anyway.
Yeah.
You're there to help them.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
thought.
they do. That parent is looking from the perspective of just their child, like that's all there. And when you have a youth group, you are considering a number of parents, one pastor, and trying to mix it all together. This is one that's easily forgot. I think a guy can go 6 or 8 months, and it's like you've just got to be reminded that I work for them.
Especially a newer guy, I think, right out of seminary or college or whatever.
Yeah.
He's excited about it. He has this zeal, and he forgets.
It's like he really wants to please the youth.
Yeah.
When
To
in
gain
reality,
momentum.
right?
Yeah.
I want to please the parents. That's who I'm working for. Okay, Donnie, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is obvious. Walk with God. And I know I went with what you kind of said. If you're not walking with God, you can't help the parents. If you're not walking with God, you're not going to help anybody. And so I know that's an obvious overlook, but sometimes a youth pastor can get in the middle of everything and be excited about games and activities and paintball and all this stuff. And if you're not walking with God and having a daily walk and spending time with God, and you're just a paid entertainer. And so
it's like you have to see this walk with God just kind of ooze out of a person's life.
Yeah.
It's like, as a parent, okay, I want my kid to be around this person because the teachable moments, the odd little things, like, no, they reacted right. They
walked with God, and walk with God with the parents, with the kids, with your pastor. All of that has to, everything else that I have to say and about what you guys have to say is goods and the bads. If you don't walk with God, it doesn't matter.
Okay, another foundational thought right there. That's really good. Your
Yeah,
number 5?
I'll probably overlap a lot with those two. My number 5 was pretty basic as well, just straight up love. And that means love the parents. It means love the teenagers. It's just a ministry of love. And trying to think of practical ways to make that happen. If it's visiting the new 6th graders when they promote into your class, and I would send them a $2 bill in the mail for their birthday sometimes, and set up times to go with them after school and pick them up and, sit with them at lunch or something. Just some practical ways to show them that I love them, as, love is more of an action than a feeling. And so figuring out ways to love the parents, that takes the youth ministry off of myself. Like, boy, I really want to love these kids so that I get seen as a really good youth pastor. We can subtly become selfish with our youth ministries, I think, where it's like, I really want the parents to give me a gift card this year for Christmas because I'm such a great youth pastor. And loving them means that regardless of what they do for you or how they treat you or how they gossip about you behind your back, your love for them transcends all that kind of stuff. And so everything coming from a standpoint of love, everything. You know, if you want to see a kid saved, it's because you want to see him get saved, not because you want to build a bigger youth group. Everything is driven by love, and that just makes everything else kind of pure,
That's
I guess.
cool. This is interesting. Bodie's behind the camera right now, and I'm going to tell a Bodie story. So hopefully he doesn't edit this out here. Bodie was going into 7th grade, and he was going into the youth group and all that stuff. And the youth leader at the time sent a little note and did one or two things that really just to a parent said, "Oh, that person cares about my son, and he's in 7th grade. Like, like he's not the most easily loved person at that time." I know he's going to edit this right out. Bodie's the best guy ever. But no, it's like one of those things where you know your kids, and and then all of a sudden that youth leader does the little things that say, "Oh, he loves my kid."
Yeah. Here, go spend more time with
Right.
He's driving me nuts.
Yeah, it's really like, okay, I want this guy to be around my kid because I know I love him and my wife loves him.
Right.
But to now know that's
and there's those gut check moments where you sometimes have to go, okay,
I'm going
to
choose
choose to love my kids?
Right?
You know?
Yeah, I would say my son's 13, and our youth pastor started running with him 3 days a week. And I don't want to run with my 15-year-old 3 days a week. And there he's coming home, and they're talking about, well, we're running, we're talking about this, and we're talking about that.
That's good. That's really good.
That's great. And as the pastor, sometimes your pastor kids get overlooked a little bit, just because they're there and they're
and they're good. They're
good. Yeah, and I really appreciate that expression of love.
That's neat. Yeah,
that's cool. Good. Well, this is interesting because our number 5s have all started with kind of some foundational, almost number 1 type of things. But I think we're all kind of going from that idea that, okay, you can build on top of that, but philosophically, this is really important. My number 4 is a simple thought that I'm going to communicate directly. Sometimes it's easy to kind of just rely on the kids to communicate all the details and the facts and what's gonna need to happen. Yeah. And so there are a couple things that I want to, let me make sure I didn't write this down. So there's a couple things that I want to do in communicating directly. One of probably the most, the best ones that I've come up with was an email that I sent out to the parents that gave them a heads up as to what we were about to talk about spiritually. So it was kind of a heads up and follow-up questions. And so if I was going to talk about a specific topic, you know what it's like when you ask your own kids, so what did you learn in Sunday school?
God.
So I tried to give them just a little paragraph that says, we're planning to talk about this. And if you wanted to ask your kids a question that's more of what did you talk about, but kind of a follow-up to what we actually, like a next
really
step, that communicate directly was really handy for them. It's also where I would clarify and write down, times and cost and dates and all those little things that I don't want to rely on that young person to do. I wanted that parent to know I'm working directly for you, with you, and I want to communicate directly to you. And if we can be on the same page on some of the spiritual things we're trying to teach, that was really cool. Parents I don't think every parent used it. Not every parent used every question, and they didn't all have that. But some of them just really enjoyed it.
It's another tool.
Yep, and then they used it at different times, too. They knew exactly what we were going through. So that's my number 4.
I want to go ahead and do mine because mine is communicate. Exactly. I would say the importance of that, all that you just said, we went ahead and went with like a group text. We had a system for that, and it seemed to be a little more user-friendly for most of my parents. And so we had that group text and communicated everything from top to bottom around, and it worked well for us. The only thing I would add perhaps is plan to communicate some things like, hey, let's get together and talk about where your kid is at 12, at 16, at 18, a face-to-face with the parents. And then I would also include communicate with the pastor, from safety to plans, make sure he knows, and that communication includes perhaps calendar and all those other things. But communicate.
Yeah.
All the
Well,
way across.
one of the things that when you're communicating with parents, you got to think of more than just, you got to think like a parent is thinking in terms of more than just dates and times. Sometimes we just give the skeleton,
Yeah.
and sometimes I like to make sure that I communicate to them that I am thinking about maybe some other stuff that they are, there's going to be assigned seating on this particular field trip, or
Yeah,
there's, when we are doing this, we're going to make sure that that we have supervision during this time.
There are plenty of life
Yeah.
vests when we're on the kayaks.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That sort
That
of
kind of
thing.
stuff,
Where
yeah.
you're
Just head off the questions you end
Yeah.
up fielding already.
Right,
You've
right.
fielded
Yeah.
for the past 3 years.
Right,
You know?
Exactly.
So
I've got a unique one though.
okay,
Good.
go to
This
it.
will be
What's your number
different from
4?
everything. Okay, I have communicate slash inform.
Let's just
This
do
is
one
a
top 5.
My thing was my last year after you talked about this at the youth leaders retreat, I took that idea and thought that was incredible. Should have been doing it the whole time. I had a handout every week for our class, but to give it to the parents was something, what I really wanted. So we did, and we even did a mailing. And that it included the handout, it included a letter to the parents. So that's why I added also information on here as well, which was sometimes funny information. It was jokes about their kids. It was fake stories.
That's
It was
good.
little puzzles. It was, or it was information that they could use, keeping them aware of, the latest app that's trending right now and what their teens are on. If they'd never heard of TikTok or Snapchat before, then I wanted the church to be informing them on where their kids are and those
Good
things.
nuance.
Um, And so when we had kind of a communication and an information ministry, it was less on me and more on, here's a book, you should read this. This is good for a mother and a son. Here's a book on parenting. Here's a book on prayer. And I wanted to be able to be generous with the information also, not just communicating the week-to-week stuff, but the helpful stuff.
I like that because, and I like that you actually put it in a way that I could refer back to it. I think it's one of the things, so we're talking about communication all across the board here on number 4, but it's done all different ways. We've got to figure out how our parents are going to absorb that information, how they're going to listen to it. And I believe that sometimes that has to be done several different methods,
The mailing got expensive, but for us it was worth it just
And
to be
what's
able
your
to get
kids
the
worth? What's
the
their
paper in their hand.
direction worth?
And then it builds your credibility,
It does.
as a young youth leader or whatever. Then, well, I've already thought about that, and we kind of addressed it here. And you have
And the mom's already
words in
thinking it.
writing.
They're already worried
Yeah.
about you. So to
Right,
inform
Yeah.
them, oh, this guy's
Yeah, he's thinking.
he looks 12, but he's actually thinking like a 22-year-old.
Right,
Okay.
right, yeah.
Yeah, so you guys just now look old enough to actually,
To some degree.
Right.
Good. This is
interesting.
and I think we could actually do a whole session on just how to communicate and things that you would do with communication. But it's so why don't guys do it? Well, I mean, why do you have
Writing is hard.
You have to pause and think through it.
We did
It's not fun.
We did some parent meetings sometimes. I never had much success with that, so this was the way I ended up doing it.
We had
best.
parent meetings 4 times a year,
Yeah.
and then individual meetings with
Yeah.
parents,
Mhm.
and that went well for the most part.
Yeah.
And they were those communications 4 times a year. They were more like blocks of like, okay, this is what's coming,
Yeah.
and we're thinking about this and that, and I'm going to be teaching through these things. And when there's always a permission slip or something to.
Yeah.
I think
Sign.
sometimes we almost want people to say, no, just trust me. I'll have it all taken care of. And this feels like an interruption. Like,
Yeah.
okay, this is just extra work. This is busy work. When in reality, I really think these are
this
this
is
is the
the
ministry.
work of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what we need to do.
And if you don't, then you get yourself in trouble.
Oh yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
you have parents who are like, I don't trust this.
Yeah,
this
we
thing."
had a kid at a camp one of my last years that was eating lunch, and I had all the forms and everything ready, and he went into the shock. He swole up all big and almost died firemen had to come in. I had to get the permission slips, and I had gone the extra mile and gotten background of history and data and all that stuff on them. I'm gonna find out he's allergic to pears and didn't even know it, and he had this huge
huge
reaction. And I had been able to communicate immediately and had all the information. And from that point on, even that was like my last 2 years as youth pastor, my credibility, because I was ready and prepared and communicated everything, went through the roof even more.
Yeah,
but I was ready for that.
And that's a whole nother, I mean, again, that's a whole nother topic, the ability to communicate in crisis, you know, to get a hold of parents, to talk with them. So, yeah, we're going to have to put that one as a whole nother topic at another time. Here's my number 3. Number 3 for me is complement slow growth. And this is going to sound funny, but top 5 ways for youth leaders to help parents. Number 3, compliment that parent on that young person's any little bit of slow growth that you have.
Yeah.
It is so you're noticing little things. You're noticing the way a young person interacts, and you're noticing all this stuff. And there's obviously things you're working on with a young person. But when you see the just the slightest inkling of this kid actually thought of others. This kid did the right thing. Boy, they went up to a visitor and they were helpful. Anything that I can do. For me, we had one event where we were at a kind of at a remote location. So the parents had to come to that spot to come pick up the kids. And so what I found myself doing was I'm going to be out in the parking lot and I'm going to meet parents as they arrive. I'll holler as to which kid needs to come and be ready to go. And I had somebody else watching the kids inside. But what it gave me was about a minute and a half to talk with the parent. Yeah. And so at first it was like, hey, how are you doing? But then I realized if I can share something that's cool about their kid, they're encouraged by that. They appreciate And so I would just look for that thing to compliment them on. And I found that those parents are concerned about their kids, and they know some of their weaknesses, and they're kind of they don't get too much feedback from school unless it's not so good, usually, and so it seems like all the adult interaction they're having about their kids is kind of dealing with problems, and it kind of takes them almost by shock. They're like, what? Oh. What?
Well, and
was that my kid? You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm pretty excited about that. I think it is one of those ways you show love is when you notice that.
Sometimes they're in the trees. They can't see the forest because they're they really are growing. They really are. They're not perfect, but they're gaining.
Yeah,
that's good.
If I'm able to ever, actually talk about something that they have been working on, it just makes them. We feel like we're on the same team.
Yeah,
when
that's
that
good.
happens.
I should have thought of that one. That's good.
Is my 3 different than your guys' 3? Well,
this
we'll
time.
see.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, go ahead, Donnie.
So
what
I'm
you
going to
got?
go with safety.
Okay.
Assure safety.
I got to help you out here because we didn't spell that right. See, your wife's not here, and safety. There we go.
What in the world?
Now it's safety.
Safety is better. I was really going for safety.
It's your own word.
It's this new thing they came out with. You can get it at Costco.
I'm going to have to look that one up.
Nice. Well, safety or safety, either way.
We know what you're talking about. Tell us what you're talking about.
Assure it. Every parent is worried about their kid going with some strange couple guy on this overnight trip, or just down to the in and out or whatever. So you need it goes with that communication, but earn that safety, earn that trust, make sure that they know from the top to bottom that you've thought through it, that there's the permission slip, we used to send out letters from Pacific Justice and ACLU about ministry conducting, how it ought to be, and those kind of things. And sometimes that comes back to bite you because you fudge on that line a little bit here or there, or whatever. But earn that safety. I had some interns that were troublemakers and caused problems, and I had to re-earn the trust of the parent because the safety wasn't followed. And more parents are concerned, maybe more concerned than I would even be as a parent myself. But if there's not the safety, you're not gonna gain with the parent. You're not gonna gain with that kid.
Yeah,
you're not gonna.
one of the simple ways, as I'm going to now speak from a parent who had 4 kids in youth group, one of the simple ways that I could kind of determine whether or not safety was important is if that youth leader was willing to say no to something that was fun. Because I know that there are things that are fun that are safe, and I know that there are things that are fun that are unsafe. And
Yeah.
I
And they're
need,
more fun usually.
Yeah,
right,
man.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I need to know that this youth leader has the ability to say no.
Yeah, that group pressure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to my kids when, they want to have fun and he's wanting to have fun with them and be friends with them. But at some point, they have to be willing to say no.
Well, I would say you just said the word be friends with him. I would say it's okay to be friends, but not cross that line of being buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the buddy mentality will get you into the unsafe real
Mhm.
quick.
Yeah, true.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So you're their friend, but not their buddy.
Yeah.
And there has to be that line.
Yeah. Safety is also a thing that's like a perception, so
Yeah.
it's not like, hey, we were safe, and you say these 3 things that a parent can actually perceive that this is going to be an unsafe situation. Can't even put their finger on it. They're just not. They're not comfortable. So it is something that you have to just deal with in perception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a good one. Good one. What's your number 3?
Mine is a little shorter one. It's just simply including them in your youth ministry, because it's their kids. Again, it's not our
Yeah.
kids. It's not the youth pastor's kids. It's their kids. We're coming alongside them to help them. So, especially in the last few years, last couple years of being a youth director, we tried to have parents around more often, or I would try to have them set up for activities or be involved. And some of the parents wanted to, some of them didn't. That was fine, if they wanted to just let us do our thing or not. But I wanted our youth ministry to be open to families, not closed from families. I think that's an unhealthy.
That's really good.
Well, that'll help with your communication and your safety.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah, so we'd have people at our house. We'd have youth activities. Our most expensive youth activity was our house. And so we're paying a mortgage on this wonderful tool, and we're putting all this money into this. This is God's house. And so we just said, it's not very big, but it's open to our youth group and the parents. And so the teens would play in the garage and outside, and the parents would all be inside. And we did that every Sunday night throughout the summer times. And that was just some of the most fruitful, effective times of our youth ministry. It was just including the entire families together. It was awesome.
I think this can, like, a guy could take this one and really run with it in a bunch of different ways. So, like, even in some of your game times, I think that they can be some of the referees, some of the, they can jump in that way. I also think you can put activities together that include mom or dad. It doesn't need to be every activity that you do, but there's ways for you to put things together that span that generation, and that parent needs that too. They need to be able to do things with their kids that are also enjoyable.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
I always said never do anything alone that you can do with someone. That's ministry. You're bringing them along, whether that's the junior higher or the parent or just always find a way to include everybody so that everybody's involved in the ministry.
Yeah,
I find that some people have certain ways that they like to be included more than others, so some people may have some financial means that they want to help out, or they're a good cook and they can provide some food. So you kind of just want to figure out how they can be part of the youth group.
On the long trips we used to take to Oklahoma, we always had that lady that always make the breakfast burritos and meet us there.
Yeah.
We get on the bus and bring us good breakfast burritos. Off we go.
Yeah,
That's the
wherever
way
their
she was.
strengths are.
Yeah, that's why she wanted to be included.
That's why they're part of it.
Yeah, and those were good breakfast burritos.
They were good. Yeah.
I never had any of those.
Should have went to Oklahoma.
I
poor
missed
guy.
that. Okay, my number 2 is once a year overview. And I think one of the things that you can really help a parent with is to do the effort at saying, here's the year in review. Here's what we're working at to get accomplished here in this youth group. And it's a little bit, you're going over scope and sequence of some of your Sunday school and some of their teaching things. I think you've got to share the calendar with them. I think it is, if if you're somewhat organized, it's a great way to say, here's when everything's going to start, here's when it's going to stop, here's what it's going to cost. Total cost for being part of this group is required this much, optional this much. It really, as a parent, again, we had 4, so we would multiply that budget times 4 kids and be like, whoo.
Yeah.
So some of those things actually need to fit in the budget, and I find that if I surprise parents, like, we're doing this month, I didn't know we were gonna, and then all of a sudden they pull their kids back. If they know at the year, they make decisions that say, yep, we're going to do that. Nope, we're not going to do that. Easier on the kids to know it. Easier on me to know what their plans were.
Yeah, at one point we had I think 5 families with 3 kids in the youth group each. Ooh. And so to help them with things like that.
Gonna have to have some car washes.
Yeah. So one year I told all the parents that we were going to do, for all the small activities, the one day, the things that didn't take any time, we were going to all do them for $0. Like, and man, all the parents were like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. That's nice. No, it's the once a year overview just helps them get an idea. Probably the hardest one of this is being able to make sure you can get as many people of the right group together for the amount of time that you need. So we did it actually during a Sunday school. Like there was a time where they all had Sunday school. We just pulled every parent. We would pull grandparents, anybody who's kind of like a part of the youth, all the volunteers, and we took that whole Sunday school hour, and it was a 4 or 5 page handout. Like it was a lot of stuff that we were going over. It was kind of the marching orders for our year. We did it. Yeah, we did it in August, September. That for us, September was kind of the start of the whole year. It culminated with summer camp, and so that was really helpful to the parents. That's my number 2.
We're copying each other basically again.
This is unbelievable.
Meet with parents regularly, and kind of the overview idea, and so then we included, so we did the same thing, Sunday school hour, but we did it 4 times a year.
4 times.
And my pastor allowed us to do that, and I still, the youth pastor now, I allowed to do, and kind of give the 4-month overview and one-on-one, and then he sets from there one-on-one meetings with the parents where he can hand out information or things that he thinks would be helpful, and just get them a cup of coffee and share, and like you said, compliment, and then I
with every parent.
Yeah, every
wow,
parent.
that's
good. Now he has 4 months to do that, and it doesn't have to happen in the first week, but he sets those timetables there, and
but every quarter he's meeting with every parent.
Yeah, and it doesn't always happen. Things happen. This guy got called out for work, or youth pastor gets sick or whatever.
So did you teach any? Did you teach any parenting teams type? I mean, meeting 4 times, you might have the time to teach how to parent.
Yeah, we did. We often 20-minute, some kind of a challenge to parents. Okay, this is what they're looking at on apps, or be aware of these things, or biblically, what does leadership and parenting look like, or anything I could steal from Sam Brock.
Right.
Usually.
Yeah, because our trouble our trouble with parent meetings was finding the time to do it, and Sunday nights after church, just
nobody wants
it
to
was
stay
so
around.
small, and it had to be so short. But something like that.
Sunday school, that's the best time we found,
that's
and we
a great
would,
idea.
Sometimes we'd have breakfast with it, sometimes just donuts. We'd really work at getting them out, and you had some that were less, but as a whole, it went well, and it was well received, and we'd say, hey, we're going to hand out this parenting book. And sometimes we even give homework, hey, a shorter parenting book of some sort. Hey, and those emails and those communications. Hey, did you read this? Did you see that? And so we're on the same page there. And it worked well.
Oh, that's cool.
Neat. That's awesome.
What do you got, number 2?
Totally separate direction here.
Excellent.
I just have grow. And basically, so that the youth ministry doesn't stagnate after a little while, then you want to grow, along with the parents and change and I don't know, humility just covers a multitude of sins along with love of just helping the parents understand that you don't have it all figured out. You're going to be preaching the word that's stable, that doesn't change, but you can change, and the humility of recovering from mistakes you've made in this, and them seeing those changes that you're trying to make, really helps them, I guess, with the trust of putting you in a role in their children's life. They're granting you that level of respect. And so the feedback, I guess, Ironwood's really good about constantly trying to improve or grow or change the ministry somehow in order to just constantly make it better. And so it helps the parents to know that there's some kind of changes happening, there's some kind of improvements that are constantly happening, working on your mistakes, on your preaching, on your communication with them. And after 12 years of it, or 10 years in one church, it's like I'm just now coming to where some of the parents are saying,
I understand
you're a lot different now than you used to be, kind of thing. And that's good. Those kinds of improvements are good.
This idea of growing, I worked with a youth group for 9 years in one spot and then 3 years at another spot, and they were very different in the way I interacted. In the one spot I had never had teens in my home, and in the other spot the teens had almost all left my home, and so I believe my ministry with parents was totally different. I went from a guy who doesn't really know what it's like to a guy who's able to say, I know what you're feeling. And that's that growth, that mentality that says I know that I've not arrived, so I know I need to grow.
We were talking, my wife and I, on the way up here about some of that idea, and we just sent the last kids that were ever in our youth group to college, and we've always had people in our home and around, and now my wife's like, I don't have anybody like that anymore. I don't connect with them in the same way because I'm the pastor now.
Yep.
And she was like, it's a little sad, but it's a growth, a change, it's a difference. And so now we have teens in our home that are friends of our teens.
Yeah,
and
that's
okay,
cool.
now how do we minister there? So we haven't figured that out a little bit. Like, that's
and
weird.
there's a book I just finished. I think it's called Know What You're For, and it's a pastor that just called himself a feedback junkie. I'm like, I'm not there yet, but just their almost craving for feedback, of trying to know where I should improve and where I could grow. That was really convicting to me.
Well, to have that attitude is to allow a parent now to share input with you.
Right.
If you don't have that attitude, the parent sees something and says, I wish he would do better, but I'm not going to tell him because he seems to be awfully confident in the direction he's going. So
be open to that. That's good.
That's good. Okay, number one on the list here as we make our way through, for me, it was breakfast with Dad. And it was a thing that I worked through that I just wanted to sit down with the dads. And there were 2 or 3 things that I was hoping to do in Breakfast with Dad. Number one, I was hoping to share with them how we were trying to grow the kids, what our kind of goals were to stretch them, and maybe where they might hear some criticism coming back, but because we're pushing on the kids a little bit, I'm wanting this person to grow. So every now and then I would kind of give dads a heads up. I really want to get them involved in the junior church puppet program. They don't really want to right now, but I think it would be good for them to kind of, and dad's kind of sitting there like, I think, and before you know it, they're now on your team trying to push and grow that person. But then probably the most effective thing was to just ask the dad what they would like us to help them with, what they would like us to teach their kids, or some things that can grow. You would find dads, some of them some of them hadn't thought about it a bunch, but some of them, it was really my kid really needs to work on this. And them saying that, and then me hearing it, I was willing to alter some of what I did in Sunday school and Wednesday night based on these meetings with Dad. Now, it was probably only 6 or 7 dads. It wasn't a hard thing. We did it once a year. It is like what you're talking about, meeting with parents on a regular basis, but this one-on-one is a whole different conversation than a meeting with all the parents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes I was just getting to know them a little bit better.
Yeah.
I was just saying hi.
Have you thought about it?
Yeah. Yep. And so this was probably over the years, probably the best thing that we did to help parents.
Neat.
And you get breakfast.
And breakfast is served. But I did not like to get up early in the morning. I mean, really, some of those guys are like, "Yeah, I can do breakfast with you. How about 5:30?"
Well,
Oh no,
Yeah, it's gotta be before work,
Yeah,
right?
which is
Yeah.
good connection.
Yeah.
With that.
That's good.
Okay, Donnie, what you got?
Okay, I have stay, and I spelled it right.
Ooh,
All
nice,
right,
nice.
yes.
Yay. I've been 20 years at the same church,
That's
and
cool.
there is a benefit. All of these things,
Yep.
15 things we're talking about, they don't happen overnight. And if you don't stay, I don't know what the average youth pastor stays now, but it's
Yeah.
not long
Yeah.
typically. It's a stepping stone or it's a whatever. I've had way more fruit in 20 years than I would have ever had in 3 or 5 or 6 or even 9. And now I have kids in my church that are I had kids in my youth group that are having kids now, and I
Yeah,
get to
that's
input
awesome.
in that. And it's a whole nother level. It's a whole nother, just stay.
Yeah.
No matter the cranky parent, no matter the cranky pastor, no matter, just stay. Just,
Yeah.
if that's where God wants you, don't doubt it. And just get in there and love and walk with God and communicate and all those things. And don't run away when it gets tough. Just stay.
The youth leader's role is so many times thought of as kind of a stepping stone or a person moves. And I do believe that God
It does
moves
move.
them along.
Yeah.
But if you have the opportunity to work through some of your own problems, some of the own, because what happens after 2 or 3 years, now all the problems are things that you've helped create.
Right. Yeah.
And you
Can't
need
blame
6
the previous
years
guy.
at least.
Right.
At least.
Right, you've
Yeah.
been there. So, and I believe your effectiveness in ministry, you know where the landmines are, you know the people
The
well.
people.
Yeah,
Yep.
because a parent, I mean, first 2 or 3 years, they're not really,
Mm.
they kind of are assuming you're
This
going to
guy's
move
gonna
on.
go, yeah.
So,
And you get to know the program and what worked and what didn't work. You get to know the finances of the church, what leeway you have and don't
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
You get to know the area kids. I know I've met I'm not pastor anymore, but I've ministered in other places, and things that I worked here don't work there. So you learn those nuances. My youth pastor right now, he's like, kids in Southern California, they're not overly active, are they? They don't want to go rock climbing. And I'm like, there are places, but where I live, no, not
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
They don't want to be out in 106-degree weather and rock climbing. You got to, some of those things you just learn with time. And like you said, if God moves you, go. But search, dig, know for sure that that's because I've had more kids come back and more fruit that's been better that just took time to ripen.
yeah, yeah.
And if I wasn't there, maybe God would have worked through that and they still would have, but you wouldn't have got to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And just stay.
That's cool. What you got?
I was just trying to think of the most biblical form of youth ministry, I guess, and it's not necessarily that we're their direct pastor, but our role is that we're to pastor. So mine was that we're to pastor, meaning shepherd the little flock that you have there. And you're not the direct authority in their life. The senior pastor would fall into that, I believe. But at the same time, you're fulfilling a leadership role in them that I think scripturally we should just, as youth directors, whether you call yourself a youth pastor or not, I think we should try to line ourselves up with the ideals of Scripture. And if the ideals of Scripture are that the spiritual health is connected to a pastor and that he is to lead and feed the flock of God, the Word of God, and to love them and care for them like sheep, then I just wanted a youth pastor who is going to be a shepherd of my kids when my kid gets into 7th grade. I want our youth director now to lead my kids in a pastoring kind of way and to challenge them and to preach the word of God to them. I wanted a Bible-focused youth ministry and to focus on growing them spiritually and then be that spiritual leader for them. I guess there's a lot of youth pastors that I would think are doing a good job with how the youth ministry is structured, but I wouldn't necessarily trust them to spiritually lead my kid.
That's true.
And
That's good.
so that's kind of my litmus test of saying, are they gonna be the godly example that I want my kids to follow? And it took me a long time to finally get there. There were all kinds of there were drug problems and sex problems and there were all the same problems in my first 3 years of ministry as there were in my last 7, but it just took those years of showing the love and of eventually getting to the place where, you know, I could try to pastor the kids through some of these issues just by trying and like you said, staying at it, staying after it, and then building the trust and becoming that spiritual mentor, and so, you know, that means all kinds of things.
I like that.
You know, I've asked my youth director not to talk about movies, for example. You know, I want him to be a spiritual example, because I remember what it was like in some ways. I wanted a spiritual leader that I didn't feel more disciplined than, or more close to God than. You know, as these young people are getting on fire for God, I want them to have somebody that's ahead of them. And so I guess pastor those young people would be my last one.
And I really think that if you as a youth leader go from being, okay, he's the game leader,
right,
to he actually pastors my kids, I think that now becomes, I can now pastor the parents, which the things that a parent needs is to learn how to work with it. I've never had a 13-year-old in my home. This is my first time to do some of these things. And so they're going through things for the first time, and wanting to listen or wanting help in that process.
And they're putting their kids in your youth ministry I always saw my greatest help to the family was sometimes resources and all that, but helping the teenager, you know, get closer to God. And if he would get closer to God, it would help the entire family. Yeah.
You know, this is really a topic, I mean, as we finish up here, this is a topic that I can see us coming back to and looking at in more detail. We haven't dealt with some single parent issues that we could help with. We haven't dealt with some of the differences that happen in the different ways that young people are schooled, homeschooling, public school, private or Christian school.
The demographic.
Yeah, there's some really different things that I think there. You talked about the active, the active teen, and so you have some different things that change there. So I think we can come back to this parenting, helping parents here. One that never made my list was some type of class for helping people with their young kids, their children, like parenting 0 to 5-year-olds. My dad used to often say, you know, I wanted to be a youth pastor, and then I tried to figure out how to help the youth, and I'm like, oh God, you just keep you keep working back, and eventually you're trying to help newly married couples raise a family so that you have good teens eventually. And so
and that's the truth.
Yeah, it really is. It's
some of that comes with the other session that we're going to talk about later. Is on my list. Some of those things.
Some of those concepts. Yeah. So this is, I hope that as we close down here, I hope that one of these ideas really challenges you. I hope that maybe you have the opportunity to take one of these ideas and say, you know what, I'm going to try to help my parents just a little bit more. You're in the ministry of youth ministry, but don't forget that is a massive ministry to the parents. You will leave that right in there.
Actually, I think you really should.
It's out there the whole
good
time.
content. I did it on purpose.